Our story kicks off with two impoverished scavengers hunting for scrap metal in a local landfill. Deep within the trash, they stumble upon a strange glass and lead capsule. Confident they can sell it for a quick buck, they forcibly crack it open. They have absolutely no clue they have just unleashed a lethal dose of invisible radiation. Oblivious to the danger, they lug the heavy item to a local junkyard owner named Everaldo, who buys the capsule from them for pocket change after a brief negotiation. That same night, Everaldo instructs his scrapyard workers to slice the heavy container wide open. As the metal splits in the pitch-black night, a mesmerizing, neon blue light spills out into the dark room. Fascinated by its otherworldly glow, Everaldo packs the deadly substance up and brings it right into his family home. Over the next 10 days, the silent killer begins its work. Everaldo's wife, Antonia, suddenly starts violently coughing up blood. Her hair begins falling out in massive clumps, and agonizing blisters erupt across her skin. Everaldo foolishly brushes it off as a passing stomach bug. Antonia, however, knows instinctively that the glowing blue artifact is responsible for her sudden decay. The moment her husband leaves for work, a terrified Antonia calls her friend Raimundo. Together, they stuff the glowing material into a burlap sack and board a densely crowded public transit bus. They head straight to the city's health department office. Trembling with fear, Antonia warns the director, Janu, that the object is cursed and killing everyone who touches it. Janu laughs it off, assuming it's nothing more than a severe case of food poisoning. But right then, Antonia collapses and projects blood across his desk. Horrified, Janu orders her to be rushed to the nearest hospital. Unknowingly, he leaves the highly radioactive sack sitting on an office chair right next to him. Meanwhile, we are introduced to Marcio, a brilliant young nuclear physicist visiting his family nearby. Out of nowhere, he receives an urgent call from his colleague, Dr. Ricardo. In a trembling voice, Ricardo explains that patients are flooding the ER with melted skin, hair loss, and unstoppable internal hemorrhaging. Ricardo strongly suspects acute radiation poisoning. Marcio is highly skeptical at first, knowing a nuclear leak in the middle of a major city should be practically impossible. But when Ricardo mentions the mysterious glowing sack left at the health department, Marcio's instincts fire up. Grabbing his radiation meter, he races to the scene with Janu. The moment they approach the public building, his detector screams a frantic alarm, its needle maxing out completely. Marcio initially thinks his device is malfunctioning. Suddenly, he spots the building's secretary, Chris, directing emergency responders to load the radioactive sack onto a truck to dump it straight into the local river. Marcio leaps from his moving car, screaming at them to freeze. He warns them that the object is a high-grade radioactive hazard. If that powder dissolves in the river, the entire metropolitan population will ingest it and face an agonizing death. The alarms are triggered, and the entire block is evacuated. Now, on a frantic manhunt, Marcio and Janu retrace the steps to find Ground Zero. They arrive at Everaldo's junkyard, where they discover a horrific scene. The scrapyard laborers are severely disfigured, their flesh literally peeling off their bones. Under intense interrogation, a dying worker admits the capsule was stolen from a demolished medical clinic. Marcio investigates the abandoned clinic. Marcio contacts the health secretary, Emerson, demanding an immediate mandatory evacuation. Instead of taking action, the corrupt politician denies the danger to protect his career. Desperate, Marcio directly contacts Benai, the director of the National Nuclear Energy Commission. Benai scrambles to check classified archives, and the revelation leaves him paralyzed with fear. The clinic had abandoned an unregistered cache of cesium-137, a volatile, hyperlethal radioactive powder. Because it is a fine powder rather than a solid block of metal, it can travel through wind, drinking water, and human contact like an invisible plague. Realizing the scale of the crisis, Marcio bypasses bureaucracy and warns the governor that the city will become a mass tomb if quarantine protocols aren't initiated immediately. The governor acts fast, requisitioning a massive sports stadium to serve as an emergency screening center. Marcio joins a heavily armed tactical police force to extract Everaldo from his residence. Officials realize that every square inch of the home is glowing with lethal energy. Everaldo initially refuses to move, but when Marcio reveals the blue powder is an invisible death sentence, the man breaks down. Inside the house, they locate Everaldo's brother, Joe, alongside his young niece, Celeste. The innocent little girl is already showing dark radiation burns across her face. The family is loaded onto an isolated transport bus bound for the stadium. At the same time, Benai touches down in Goiânia via an emergency military flight. He goes straight to the sealed office where the breached capsule rests. The moment he activates his Geiger counter, the device errors out from extreme exposure. The radiation field is so intense that a human would receive a fatal dose within minutes of standing near it. Benai quickly commands a fleet of concrete mixers to encase the entire artifact in a massive, impenetrable concrete tomb. But Marcio drops another bombshell that stops Benai in his tracks. The cesium didn't stay inside the office. Dozens of residents have handled it, meaning the radioactive dust is currently tracking through every street in the city. Benai immediately scans Marcio. While his skin is clean, his shoes are heavily contaminated. Benai demands he strip them off and destroy them instantly. Arriving home late that night, a paranoid Marcio strips down to his underwear in the yard out of absolute terror. He refuses to step near his elderly father or his pregnant wife, Bianca, keeping a strict distance to shield them from the invisible killer. The following morning, Benai takes over the national airwaves, broadcasting a grim warning to the public. Anyone who has encountered or seen the glowing blue rock must report to the stadium quarantine zone immediately. The stadium devolves into absolute chaos as thousands panic. Environmental scientist Paula joins the emergency task force, and during her screening, Marcio makes a terrifying realization. Antonia had transported the glowing material across town on a standard municipal bus line. That vehicle has been driving around for days, effectively dusting hundreds of innocent passengers with cesium. He identifies 6 critical ground zero hotspots, including the homes of Carlinhos, Everaldo, Joe, and Nina. Yet, the moving transit bus remains the primary threat. Paula demands a complete shutdown of the public transit system, but the governor overrides her, refusing to trigger a mass civilian riot. Risking his own life, Marcio sprints into the contaminated wards of the hospital, begging a fading Antonia for the bus route numbers. With her final breaths, she gasps out that it was either line 08 or 09. Her heartbreak and devastation. Back at the stadium, the true horror of human error comes to light. Everaldo's brother, Joe, had taken a handful of the glowing powder home to his young daughter, Celeste, telling her it was stardust from the sky. The innocent child had painted her skin with the beautiful, glowing poison and sat down to eat dinner without washing her hands, directly ingesting the highly concentrated cesium. When the scanners pass over little Celeste, her entire body registers off-the-charts radiation readings. Shockingly, her mother, Katrina, is completely uncontaminated. Due to mandatory safety containment laws, the weeping mother is forcefully dragged away from her screaming child. Joe, who is also highly radioactive, stays behind to comfort the girl in isolation. The local hospitals transform into scenes of absolute horror. Terrified for their own lives, the majority of the city's doctors and nurses abandon their posts and go on strike. Left abandoned, Carlinhos' exposed hand has completely rotted away, and he screams in agony. Seeing the collapse, Dr. Eduardo Victor and a brave physicist named William risk their lives to re-enter the hot zone. William establishes emergency exposure limits for the remaining medical volunteers, pinning dosimeters to their gowns before sending them into the quarantine ward. Meanwhile, Paula and Benai scour the city streets. They inspect Everaldo's abandoned home, which has become a lethal epicenter. Everaldo had proudly displayed the glowing poison on his dining table for 10 days, inviting friends over to touch and marvel at the glowing substance. But the ultimate disaster occurred when Katrina unknowingly swept the remaining glowing dust up and washed it straight down the drainage system. Paula and Benai are horrified, realizing the municipal sewers dump straight into the city's main reservoir. They immediately deploy armed units to seal off the entire neighborhood. Meanwhile, Marcio hunts down the contaminated transit bus, finding it packed to the brim with passengers. He forces the vehicle to stop and reveals the terrifying reality, directing the panicked riders straight to the stadium. Police Chief Marlon spearheads a criminal investigation to find who is legally to blame for leaving the hazard exposed. When the property owner, Glovis, and the hospital executives are brought in, they frantically point fingers at each other. Their corporate greed, personal feuds, and legal loopholes had allowed a literal radiological bomb to sit completely unguarded in a vacant lot. Elsewhere, the unexposed Katrina is released from the hospital, completely broke and homeless. A compassionate nurse hands her fresh clothes and emergency funds just so she can survive the night. While testing the river, Marcio and Paula find the water supply is miraculously clean. But as a scrap collection truck rumbles past them, their sensors go haywire once again. They pursue the vehicle and uncover an even bigger nightmare. The scrap collectors had bundled highly radioactive waste together with recycled paper scrap, which has already been shipped to a massive commercial manufacturing plant in Sao Paulo. Shortly after, Marcio is viciously bitten by a radioactive stray dog outside Everaldo's residence, forcing the heroic scientist to be hospitalized as a patient himself. The tragic aftermath. The crisis worsens by the hour until the inevitable tragedy strikes. Little Celeste and Antonia's internal organs completely fail under the relentless radiation assault. Both suffer catastrophic cardiac arrests and pass away in extreme pain. When it comes time to bury the victims, their remains are sealed inside thick, lead-lined containment coffins. However, the local citizens are so overwhelmed with fear that they launch violent riots at the burial grounds, pelting the security teams with stones. They are terrified that burying the irradiated bodies will poison the local groundwater for generations. The military police are forced to use riot gear to complete the burials. A few weeks later, Marcio is finally discharged from the hospital. Using his specialized skills, he coordinates with the governor to design a high-security, deep underground nuclear waste depository to safely store the city's radioactive debris. In a final, emotional public address, Benai stands before the global press and takes full accountability for the regulatory failures that caused the disaster. Marcio is finally reunited with Bianca, ready to start their lives over. Everaldo and his surviving relatives are eventually cleared of contamination, but they are left completely destitute, without a home, without their loved ones, and with absolutely no hope for the future.